All right, y'all. It's time for another Diddy update. Uh, a lot of buzz has been brewing on the internet, suggesting that Diddy might actually be a paid informant or some kind of a confidential informant to the feds or to the New York police. This is not a theory that I'm coming up with. It's been bubbling on the internet for the last few days. One of the people who has said that has been Gene Deal. Gene Deal has speculated, and you can watch it on his million interviews on YouTube. He has speculated very loudly that Diddy might be engaged in some kind of informant relationship to law enforcement, which could explain some of the things that are happening to him. And then more recently, this conversation came up on Fox News, where they asked a very similar question. I know that's Charlemagne right there. I don't. This is not a case of mistaken identity. This is from Fox News, and there was a transition I think they were making from one image to the next. It's just where we stuck. But I want to show you the conversation, the very quick conversation that they had about Diddy that gets at this.
Joining me now, host of Takedown with Chris Hansen, Chris Hansen. So now we have two people come out saying that Diddy was talking to the feds. Do you think that's true?
Whether it's true or not, and he might have been cooperative in some way, shape, or form, you don't get away with human trafficking unless you give up John Gotti or something like that. And that's not what happened here. I can tell you, Jesse, that this investigation's been going on for a long time, very closely held by HSI, so much so that even some of the agents on the raid a week ago today didn't know whose house they were raiding until they got there. That's how closely held this investigation.
Wow, because there could have been a tip.
Absolutely.
And there are allegations.
So this is interesting information, right? And this is important. The idea that Diddy was a confidential informant has come up because people keep saying the feds raided the house, the feds broke in, the Homeland Security is there, and somehow he ain't get arrested. He must be snitching. Like my man said, if you're giving up information to the feds, oh, you'll get a nice break. That's the whole point of snitching, right? You'll get a nice break. You can probably sell some dope. You can commit wire fraud. You can gamble. You can probably have an illegal, all kinds of illegal operations going on. But what you can't do is traffic human beings. So if Diddy got off for committing a crime, it wasn't that. And that seems to be what they're investigating him for. That's what the allegations are that he's being investigated for. I don't know for certain, but that's what they're saying. So this idea that Diddy is an informant is a dangerous one. And, if you come up in the streets, you don't want people to call you a snitch if you're not one. You don't want people to call you a snitch, period. And so I'm not willing to buy into this narrative that Diddy is an informant. But this is one of those narratives that is spread. What is more likely is that the feds are building a case. The feds are building a case. And because Diddy has not been arrested does not mean that he won't be arrested. On top of that, speaking of snitching, there are other people who say that they are willing to snitch. Again, I mentioned Gene Deal. Gene Deal has been given interview after interview after interview about Diddy on all kinds of platforms, giving lots of interesting information, telling amazing stories. And he's saying, look, he's ready to snitch. Now, he didn't use the word snitch, but what he said is he would be okay taking the stand against Diddy, especially with regard to Diddy's relationship with the late Kim Porter. So not only do you have people who are saying that Diddy's a snitch, which is, I don't think, true, but you got people saying that they're willing to tell. They're willing to go on the stand. And this is an important moment because there was a time 20 years ago where people wouldn't be taking the stand against popular and powerful rappers, and they certainly wouldn't be publicly promising they would. You might see people who are ratting behind the scenes. You might see people who are willing to take the stand if they're going to get out of a crime themselves. But to just take the stand to testify, that's something new. I'm not saying Gene Deal is wrong. Let me be very clear. I'm not saying that. What I'm saying is that this means, again, that they're building a case, because not only does Diddy now have less armor of protection around him, because one of the allegations is that he's paying off security, that he's paying off law enforcement, because his head of security was the same as Michael Jackson's head of security, and that means that he's powerful and resourceful and knows all kinds of stuff. And if that's the case, he might be able to do this, but we don't know. What we know for sure is that the feds are closing in. I'm not saying Diddy's innocent. I'm not saying Diddy's guilty. All I'm saying is that the law enforcement infrastructure in America is very clear. It's very transparent. It's very obvious what's happening here. And that is that they have built a case, that they're shifting public opinion about Diddy. Not that they need to do that. Whatever they look for when they raid it is there. And then we also know that there are other people who have a lot of information. In addition to his former bodyguards who didn't sign I don't believe Gene Deal signed an NDA, which is why I think he's able to do this. But on top of that, people believe, including Gene Deal has said this himself, that Cassie is willing to testify if she is subpoenaed. So when you have all of that, it means that, at a moment where the only way Diddy could possibly get free is if nobody comes forward, you got a lot of people and a lot of moving parts happening. Let's recap some of them. Homeland Security was involved in the Fed's raid on Diddy's LA and Miami homes in connection to sex trafficking allegations. Then you got Brendan Paul, the man who was alleged to be his drug mule. He got arrested for drug possession. Why? Let me not say why, but what we know is in Lil Rod or Rodney Jones's sexual assault civil case against Diddy that was filed last month, he named Brendan Paul as the drug mule, and suddenly the man who was named as a drug mule, who we never heard before, gets arrested on Diddy's, or after getting off of Diddy's private jet to Miami Opa-locka Airport, where we saw Diddy. It was reported that Diddy sold his share of the Revolt TV network to Essence Magazine owner Richelieu Dennis. Now, again, I don't know if that's true yet. That has not been finalized or confirmed, but we know that even the talk of him selling his Revolt shares after stepping down as CEO of Revolt a couple of months ago is telling. You had Teray, the journalist, claim that Diddy fired his male relative from an internship because Diddy refused to spend the night with him. The feds issued subpoenas for Diddy's private charter jet, commercial airlines, phone providers, computer companies, so that they could find out who flew on his planes, when and where. When the feds want to know who's on your plane, when and where, they're trying to figure out something about trafficking, whether it's drug trafficking, human trafficking, something. Again, doesn't mean he's innocent, doesn't mean he's guilty, but it means the feds are looking for something. And then just yesterday, I'll be sure, the R&B singer, also the biological father of Sean Diddy Combs' stepson, Quincy, strongly implied that Diddy was responsible for his 2022 coma, and he has previously suggested that Diddy was responsible for Kim Porter's death. Again, not saying it's true, not saying it's not true, but what we know for sure is that there is a heavy body of information. There is a heavy amount of what do you want to call it? There's a lot of evidence. There's a lot of people. There's a lot of people who are now stepping forward, and you're starting to hear more and more celebrities say that they don't rock with him or that they do, but a lot more say they don't than they do than ever before. This is a mess.